So here's something that wasn't on my 2025 bingo card. Apparently, I appear in a Roblox game now. Charming. Also, whoever coded my character to go between all the food shops can go f*** themselves.
That's rude.
Hey there guys, I'm Will, and welcome to the Comedy Review, the show where a man talks about cars he can't fit in. Hey Will, what do you do for work? I don't know, I get slagged off by smiley faces for a living. It's also the show where we talk about things that happen in motorsport. Things like this. Nico Hülkenberg unveils his Monza package, anti-immigration protests in Milan as Ferrari still house asylum seeker Lewis Hamilton, and Oscar Piastri presents my favourite meme of 2025.
Ooh, what's this button? What's he doing?
We're at the Temple of Speed, and as usual, there's a lot to cover. Starting, well, right here. The big news this week, well, apart from Hulk and balls here, was the inevitable Twitter fallout following Lando Norris's retirement from Zandvoort last week. Oscar Piastri, now with a sizable lead in the driver's standings, though in fairness, he's doing a great job of hiding his happiness around the whole situation.
Yeah, it's obviously never nice to see that kind of thing. Unfortunately, it is a part of racing, but...
Engine supplier Mercedes were quick to confirm it wasn't anything to do with them, not that they were the ones feeling most of the heat. That was directed to Andrea Stella, apparently seen smiling at Lando's downfall. And Quadrant fans, if this is a smile, then maybe this should be the next thing in your Happy Meal. In other news, Ferrari debut a one-off look this weekend with a stunning livery meant to hark back to the 1975 season, where Claire Regazzoni won the Italian Grand Prix and Niki Lauda took home the championship. It also reminds me of the 2016 car, which, like 2025, was also a little bit shit. That could also describe Lewis Hamilton's mood coming into this one. The Briton handed the post-race penalty in Zandvoort, which would see a grid draw for Monza this weekend, and all over an incident that happened before the lights had even gone out in the Netherlands, because apparently Team LH hasn't suffered enough. Elsewhere, Isaac Hadjar was still on cloud 9 following his first Formula 1 podium last Sunday, and having literally split the trophy with the team, the result inevitably began stirring rumours of a move up to the main outfit, perhaps even as early as the last few races of 2025. So I'd just like to take a moment to appreciate this lad's career. It's been a great run, but I guess all good things come to an end. Right, what else is new? Monaco signed a new long-term contract extension, and Adrian Newey's on drugs. Not sure if those two things are related, but let's get into Friday practice. As per usual, FP1 would see various rookies take up spots of our regular slabs of meat as opening practice kicked off at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. Lando Norris wasn't one of those rookies, he just spent the first hour driving like one. The other McLaren, meanwhile, fielded junior Irishman Alex Dunn, whose P16 was the highlight of his weekend, given his subsequent F2 outing was probably thwarted by the efforts of Osama bin Lindblad. I didn't come up with that one, but I had to give it some recognition. Plus, we'll probably be using it a lot in the Comedy Review next year. Paul Aaron was the other reserve taking part in FP1, filling the shoes of Franco Colapinto, and doing his best to honour the Argentinian's gesture with this tribute into the second chicane. Elsewhere, the RBs were on a mission to find their favourite gravel trap, Williams to find their favourite way of pissing off Pierre Gasly, and George Russell showed off his best Lando Norris impression, though I felt it was missing that little bit of depression and sympathy pandering at the end. It looked as though McLaren wouldn't have it all their own way in Monza, as the Britain could only muster 6th by the flag, in a session topped by Lewis Hamilton and the two Ferraris. I hope the Scuderia enjoyed that, because it's probably the last you'll see of it all weekend. McLaren were back on top for FP2, Norris topping the timesheets, though we did get this strange bit of breaking news from Alex Jakes.
Not to be outdone, Norris also had issue with his fades.
With the 5-year-old girls in tears then, the Ferraris now wanted to make the Tifosi feel the same way, both Leclerc and Hamilton making their mark on the Monza layout by way of decorating the tarmac with little bits of gravel trap. Lance Stroll found himself in the rare scenario of coming across a driver slower than him, though was able to restore order by later holding up Tsunoda at the Parabolica. And we couldn't wrap this section up without a few shout-outs, Carlos Sainz coming home P3 for Williams, and Taliban Tonelli getting one practice session further than he did last year before ending up in the Stones. Now, on to Saturday. Well, actually no, because it's time for our ex-Bellend of the Week. I'm not even going to big it up this week. Of course, it's another f***ing Lando fan. I've never hated Zach and Andrea more than I do today. Like, it physically repulsed me to see them next to Lando, and this in itself speaks a lot about the hate I've harboured for this team. Oh, Jesus Christ, where do we even start with this one? This all comes from, well, according to her profile, 23-year-old, or perhaps that's months, at Heart Forever, who's apparently also in her suicide era. And, have you ever had thoughts about maybe hurrying up? You people live in the most twisted reality. Typical Drive to Survive fan. You are very, very unwell. You Lando fans are worse than Max fans. Damn, who thought we'd see the day? Big thank you to Anwen here for bringing this deluded bellend to my attention, and if you'd like to nominate the next ex-bellend of the week, use the hashtag on screen, tag me on the platform, or join our Discord server. Now then, on to Quali Day. Oh look, it's Hulk and Balls again. Saturday morning, we bring the breaking news that Pierre Gasly is a f***ing idiot, signing an extension with Alpine until at least 2028, seemingly in doing so, revealing he's also a massive fan of self-harm. Meanwhile, Lando Norris was busy topping FP3, so can't wait to see how he'll lose that come qualifying, and Charles Leclerc was getting a parabola king from his Ferrari, who had apparently grown fond of the gravel traps following Friday and did its best to be reunited at multiple points across the session. Lewis Hamilton was also quick when he was straightlining turn 1, his slow and painful fall from grace continuing as he was caught on the radio begging his team to make him faster. Max Verstappen had problems of a different sort, the Dutchman having to put up with the French as Esteban Ocon wanted to get his sole and only overtake of the weekend in on the run-up to the first chicane. That takes us nicely into qualifying, and as per usual, Antonelli finds himself under pressure, the alarm bells really ringing when he puts in a lap 1/10 off that of Sonoda. Fortunately for the Italian crowd, Kimi would make it through, the same not being able to be said for Liam Lawson. Actually, I haven't got a clue what he was doing out there. Teammate Isaac Hadjar then got a bit too scared of those Red Bull rumours, opting to take himself out of Q1 in the hope that Helmut Marko might just go away. The rest of the drop zone will be made up of the Alpines and Stroll, and so with no further surprises, we move on to Q2. Lando Norris took a different approach in this session, hoping if he got all his bottles out of the way, he might just get through the top 10 shootout unscathed. You have to make it there first, however, and after a nervy first lap, the Briton found himself perilously close to the bottom 5. While he was able to lift himself to safety in the dying seconds, the same could not be said for anyone driving a Williams, a box, or a striking pair of bollocks. Not jealous whatsoever, now let's just find out what McLaren gets pole. Only that wouldn't be as certain as we first thought, Piastri edging his teammate on the initial runs, only to be displaced himself by the Ferrari of Leclerc. Hamilton and Russell then split the McLarens before Verstappen snatched up provisional pole for himself. With Bolding McBoldface impressed then, we still had one run to go. Piastri jumping the Ferraris, but still half a tenth away from Verstappen's time at the top. Next across the line was Norris, whose anti-bottling tactics actually paid off, up to a provisional pole. Not that the garage seemed particularly impressed, maybe they just knew the TV directors had cut to them too soon, as Max was back across the line and back into P1. A classic qualifying session then, setting up a thrilling battle for race day. So if you've enjoyed the video up to now, here's your opportunity to like and subscribe. Now let's get to it. Race day, and after Hulk and Balls was unsacrimoniously killed off on the formation lap, it was time for lights out and for Lando Norris to try his famous drive on the grass tactic again. Shockingly enough, that didn't work. Luckily for the bottle job, Max had just decided to straight line turn 1 anyway. Just down the road, Leclerc had got ahead of Piastri, the Australian the second driver this weekend, to show off his genitalia as he retook the Ferrari around the outside of Lesmo 1. Verstappen was told to give back the lead at the start of lap 2, but not wanting to be left out, Oscar Piastri decided he loved overtaking Charles Leclerc so much, he wanted to do it again. 2 laps later, and Verstappen was back on Lando's tail and back into the lead, before deciding it was 2023 again as he shot off into the distance. Piastri was also back into third, and, well, what an opening few laps then. What were Crofty's words? Who says you can't overtake around the Temple of Speed? Well, with the benefit of hindsight, I'd now like to tell Crofty he can go and f*** himself. Let's check in on special then. He just got Esteban Ocon a penalty in a move that was so relevant it took the TV director 10 minutes to find the footage of the thing. Carlos Sainz was the next one in trouble, deciding he didn't fancy the same chicane, nor the alternate route set out in the race director's instructions. The stewards only handed him a reprimand, however, potentially to balance out the unsolicited face f***ing he received last week in Zandvoort. As Norris tested that bottle territory, Alonso and Bortoletto were having fun in the pits, the Spaniard able to get past his protege before his front suspension shot itself out of Ascari a few laps later. We turn to the battle between past and future Red Bull rejects then, Liam Lawson making his feelings known, though how he was in a position to pass Yuki Tsunoda in the first place I have no idea. Turn 4 would soon claim 2 more victims as Carlos Sainz tried to move on Oliver Behrman, the Haas driver opting to choose death instead, ruining both of their races and picking up 2 more penalty points, taking his total to 10. You can kill the man, but not the idea. As you could tell, this was turning into a thrilling Grand Prix, so thrilling in fact, Sky Sports thought they could retain their viewership by suggesting Max Verstappen could spontaneously combust at any moment. As it turned out, he didn't, and on lap 38, boxed with a hard compound of tyre. Norris, meanwhile, wanted to do the opposite of that, go long, then switch to the softs in an attempt to challenge Max at the end. This was McLaren though, and they hadn't f***ed up strategy yet, so here we go. When called to box, Norris denied the call, suggesting they pit Piastri first. And you know what? I'm going to let the Aussie do the honours on this one.
Ooh, what's this button? What's he doing?
Set the fireworks off.
So while Piastri boxed just fine, Lando had just left himself vulnerable to the undercut. There will be no undercut, came the call from the team. Only that's a little hard to orchestrate when you leave your guy in the pit box 4 seconds longer than you're f***ing meant to. That led to the hilarious scenes of Piastri coming out ahead and McLaren scrambling as they begged their driver to let his championship rival back through. Take that championship setting out of it, and we're looking at a repeat of Hungary last year, where if you remember the positions were reversed and Piastri was on for his first win. You may also remember, well unless you're a Lando fan on Twitter, that the Briton was a whiny little bitch for half the race before we let Oscar back through. There being none of that this time round as Piastri relinquished second, much to the amusement of race leader Max Verstappen, who found it so funny he nearly drove right off the circuit. The Dutchman would cruise home to a comfortable victory, the first outside of the Horny Horner era I might add, as the McLarens completed the podium in a race that brings with it, well, a fair bit of discussion. I put out on Twitter that had things been reversed, I didn't think Lando would have done the same now, considering how close the championship fight is with the man he'd be letting by. That was too much to comprehend for his fan base, so I highly suggest you head over there if you fancy a laugh, and maybe the opportunity to lose a few brain cells while you're at it. Ooh, Lando would have swapped no matter if the championship is on or not. Congratulations, maybe he'll shag you now. At least the drama at the end made the race somewhat watchable, the fastest F1 race in history in fact, and thank because as soon as Crofty mentioned the abundance of overtakes, they all went away and it turned into a bit of a snooze fest. Let me know your ratings down in the comments below. We should mention some shout outs as well, and fair play to Gabby Bortoletto for another strong points finish, as well as pit lane to 10th for Isaac Hadjar, though not the best result if you don't want that Red Bull seat next year. Finally, Lewis Hamilton did his job, so that's nice too, I guess. F1 takes a break next week, which I can only assume is because of 9/11, and they were too afraid of how I'd link that in with Taliban Antonelli. Still, I'll be covering something though, so if you enjoyed the video, get subscribed as you really won't want to miss what's next. Big thank you to the members and patrons as well, and if you'd like to see next Sunday's video, well, right now, go and check that out in the description below. Anyway, I'll be back soon with another video. Until then, you know the gist by now. F*** off.